Hi everyone. Um, I found this week to be very interesting, and without further ado, I'm going to go right into answering these questions. So, I'm actually looking into something that I noticed in my own library. So, the goal that I want to accomplish is to diversify our public library history collection. I noticed while I was reading that a lot of the history collection is quite outdated, and we don't really have a lot of books about cultures in their own voices. So, how am I willing to put myself on the line? I want to bring this directly up to the board of trustees and the staff members, just so that way we can, have the conversation and do something about it. So, my plan to accomplish this goal would firstly be to read the history book collection and make sure that most of the books in the stacks are current and up to date with no outdated narratives, because as history progresses there is always new insights and new perspectives. The only exceptions I would make to this rule are if books have any sort of historical significance or they are found within special collections, because our public library houses our town's local history. So books like that would not get weeded. Secondly, after going through the newly weeded collection, I would take note of what cultures, histories are lacking within the collection. After doing that, I would start consulting the internet and look up authors from that culture who wrote about their own histories, who wrote books about their own histories. So by doing this, it gives that culture, that author, the opportunity to talk about their own culture, because they might have a different way of explaining some of the customs and stories behind, their culture. By constantly having an outsider research about a culture and then write a book about it, they might be, taking things out of perspective. So by having their own voices heard, it really gives us that, sense of what their culture is really about to them. And finally, we would start ordering books through the journals that we get every week, and we would start performing a big diversity audit to make sure that the history collection has enough diversity in it, and keep statistics on that. So who would be benefiting? So, firstly, the librarians would be benefiting, because by bringing up this conversation and having this uncomfortable conversation, because we all have our own biases when ordering books or looking for books in the collection. We might have a certain time period that we find interesting, and we kind of use those books to buy, or we have our own inherent biases that we might not be aware of. So by having this conversation, it opens the door for those, to be really informed of like what we're ordering and why. Secondly, it benefits patrons, because now when they come to the library, they can find books on some of the more obscure cultures and have the actual voices of those people write about their culture. So it gives the patrons just an opportunity to explore different cultures that they might not have been able to because of our narrow collection. So who would help me accomplish this goal? The librarians that I work with, because I would have them helping me lead. And again, once we have these conversations, working in tandem with the library staff, it would give us this more productive weeding sessions, because everyone would kind of be on the same page. So the resources that are needed, simply we just need some carts so we could fill up the books and then bring them to the reference desk, go through the copyright dates to make sure that they're up to date. And one of the most important things is simply just patience and time, because this is going to be a tedious process. But once we get through it, we'll have more of an understanding of the weaknesses in our collections and working to improve it. So the tentative start and completion of the goal, I would start this probably in the next 2 months, simply because the library board meetings are the last Wednesday of the month, which is, yesterday or 2 days ago. And as a result, I wouldn't be able to talk to them. In this 2 month period, it would give me enough time to go through the collection more diligently and making sure that I have examples of what I am talking about. So measuring the success of the goal. So honestly, before weeding, I think we should do a quick diversity audit and, go through the collection to have a baseline of how diverse the collection is. So we could have, like, the ethnicity of the author, the history of what culture is being talked about. Is it talking about traditions and culture? Is it just talking about, the general story of the culture, that kind of stuff? So once you have that baseline, then we can actually go through and compare it to the next audit that we're going to do once we start adding in those extra books. Um, it also would be a good idea to have some sort of survey for patrons, whether it be an email survey or a paper survey, where they can express what books they are looking for, what cultures they want to learn more about. And then what we can do is keep a statistical sheet of what, cultures keep coming up. And by doing that, it helps us with feasibility simply because the library budget is finite. So having, multiple people ask about the same culture, it gives librarians the opportunity to make sure that they buy those books because that's what people are looking for. And it doesn't disturb the budget that we currently have. So I know I went about this a different way, but this was something that I was actually going to talk about last week when we were talking about policy changes. So I really wanted to bring this up because I feel like this is just such an important part of my library and something that we are not like lacking, something that we are lacking rather. So I look forward to what everybody else has to say. Thank you for listening.